Hi, and welcome to another episode of Path of Exile University. Today, we're going to be covering Path of Building with me. Hello, it's me. I'm me. So, we're going to go over the basics of Path of Building to help you use both guides and testing yourself. We have some examples in here as well that we're going to show. That being said, do remember that we are getting push notes in 7 days. We don't know if both of these guides are surviving. But it is currently looking like they will, sadly, because Seismic is one of the examples. But that is looking like it is surviving. It's an excessively complex tool, and it's not a simple representation of a build. Like you will be overwhelmed with a lot of information, but you can use it for simple stuff too. And we just want to teach you the basics so that you know how to operate a build guide and figure out things. Oh, it's in 4 days. 4 days for the patch note. If you want to use PoB, following guide is perfectly fine, and you don't need the advanced parts. You can just use it to see the items and stuff like that. And then there is a web-based solution called pub.in. It'll be a simpler method of looking at a build, but it does not have the configurability of PoB itself, so you can't play around with it as much. And the aim of this class is for you to be able to use PoB for a shared build and to understand some of the more important parts of calculations that have a large impact on your character. So what is Path of Building? It's a project started by OpenRL to provide a shareable passive tree and an item emulator, and it has been expanded and worked upon. It's now a community-based project, and it's like project accumulated. So OpenRL, a bit of a dick, because he got hired by GGG, and now he doesn't have time to do PoB. He's not a dick, he's a great guy, but very selfish to get hired by GGG. But yeah, it is now the local identity fork, but a lot of people work on it. So they hire talented people, which is good. And yeah, the community fork is the only one that is in use now. So it's pathofbuilding.community. Doing the in-game PoB for PoE too? Maybe. He's a great guy. Honestly, between Neversink and Path of Building, like, the game would be pretty unplayable without. You have deleted a box? What box have I deleted? I haven't done anything. I didn't delete anything. Never mind, go on. This is your fault. I haven't changed anything. Anyway, navigation's here. And then yeah, we have the skill section. This will tell you like what stats to choose and stuff like that. And then down here, it'll tell you if you have any updates needed. Here will be the passive tree, and in different slides, it'll be other information here. And here you'll have extra control tools. Now, an important thing to know about build guides is that on the PoE build forums, actually just everywhere, there will be bad build guides. And since YouTube removed the dislike feature, you don't really have a good way of knowing what are bad guides and what isn't. So get recommendations from friends. But yeah, there's a lot of people that'll literally just re-upload an old guide and call it 3 point, whatever the next league is. So it can be hard. Oh. It got added on its own. Use the dislike extension? I do. So in the navigation, like if you go all the way back and then, let's see, I'll just show you. If you go all the way back, and you then click new, it'll have reset everything. So it doesn't end up holding anything from the last thing you were looking at. Current build shows what's currently open. Save. This allows you to make a local copy. So say you're following someone's guide or something, you can make a copy of that so that you don't have to reload it or reopen it. Import and export allows you to import a build, and you can import anyone's build. This isn't something you need access to. For example, I have Zizaran here right now, but I can just search for Steel Mage, and I can now just look at every character Steel Mage has And I can be like, ooh, well, is this character? And then I just click on the import and both of them. And I can just start exploring Steel Mage. So that's a really, really good feature to learn, because sometimes people would be like, hey, Ziz, can you give me a POB? But anyone can just write in the name. And most streamers have profiles that are public. And then boom, you can search for league. You can actually search here too. So if you know you're looking for a character, and then you can just import everything. There's also a notes section, which is here. And a lot of my build guides will have notes. There won't be anything here by default. There's no like AI that just writes these. But yeah, we put a lot of notes in there. Configuration, there's a big settings tab. A lot of guides will do crazy shit. Like you can see here, right? You have extra things. A lot of people will put fictitious numbers in and be like, do I shock? Yeah, I shock. 50% shock. Like, boom. I love that. And suddenly your damage went up. But you might not shock at all on that build. So that's very common for people to skew numbers to make people think their build is better. I do the opposite. I always make sure the build is worse in PoB than what it is in practice. Because long term, it's always better if a player follows your build guide and goes like, this is so much stronger. I must do more damage than PoB says. That's always better than the opposite. It's nothing is worse than following a build guide and the person you're watching is like, yeah, I have all these items, man, but you don't need them. The build's fine just without it. Like, yeah, I have 100 million damage, but you'll be fine. And then you're like struggling into your 11 maps and you're like, yeah, the build's not fine without that. And a lot of people do get that experience. It's very common. And I feel like every time I've done a build guide where everything was like dog shit items and everything, people are like, I'm having such a good time. And then in the tree, we have the main window, skills. This is where you add and change skills, and it also shows you what is being calculated. So if I put a molten shell here, you can see all the explosive arrow calculations go away. If I have explosive arrow here, it'll show all of that. And it can be a little confusing. I might as well show you and teach you the example right now, because explosive arrow is a very, very common mistake. Now, everybody knows when they're following an explosive arrow guide, most will mention at the start that you want 20 fuses. It's very important for explosive arrow, right? That's the max. It doesn't matter if you put over that. But everybody knows you want max fuses for explosive arrow. The problem is, a lot of people would put 20 stages when they aren't getting 20 stages. And this isn't calculated for you. So I've seen a lot of people using slow bows. So for example, for this build, a very fast bow is super important. But I'll show you something. So right now you can see the bow we're using, right? It's plus 3 gems and 1.8 attack speed. Now, I'm going to do something else to show you how confusing things can be in this game. So let's do a Harbinger bow, which is very slow. We'll put attack speed on it. Or actually, just to like really drive it home, let's not put attack speed on it. We're going to put the gems on it. And actually, even better example is going to be an Imperial bow. No, because that does have the high attack speed too. Alright, we'll just do this. And now we're going to have 100 wed. Right. So. Wow. You see that? 2 million more damage. So now it would be easy for a lot of people to think like, well, this is better. Right? A lot of players would think this is better now. And this is maybe half or less than half of the damage of this bow. So I'll explain why that is. So for explosive arrow, you really want to hit 20 fuses because each fuse makes everything do additional damage. Now, PoB doesn't calculate the fuses for you. So this happened quite a lot for people that were following my guide. That's something I probably hadn't made clear enough. Even though I did tell people to go for only high attack speed bows, I still saw one person using something like this. It was like a 1.3 attack speed bow. And they hadn't fully understood how important that was. And in their PoB, they had set stages to 20. But they were maybe only getting like 8. So now let's compare, right? 8 explosions with a Harbinger bow versus 20 with a short bow. And yeah, like Yay the Real pointed out in chat, the same thing happened to Bladefall, Blade Blast. Because everyone would just put max overlaps in. And there are some things that can't be calculated by PoB, and we end up doing them manually. Just so people like know, I'll explain how to calculate bow. So you would look in-game at your buff duration. But with Malevolence, that would normally be 1.45. So then you would do 1.45, and you would multiply by your attack speed. So with the short bow, you would also have, normally you would have Frenzy and Onslaught. So here you would have 2.58 attack speed. So you multiply the buff duration. That's how long it takes for the explosive arrows to explode. And then you multiply that by your attack speed, which is 258. And then you multiply that by your number of totems, which is 6. And you add 1 because the timer doesn't start until the first arrow hits. So you get 1 arrow for free. So with this setup, we're actually getting 23 arrows. Now let's compare that. So that we're actually overkill, which is good because sometimes the boss will move or something, so it won't get hit. Now let's compare that with the Harbinger bow. So it's 1.45 for the buff duration, 1.52 for the attack speed, times 6 totems. Now we're only getting 13. So it is 4 million less damage. So that is just a quick example of how that you can fuck up in Path of Building. Oh, I forgot the +1. You're right. You're right. So it is 14. It's 3.5 less million damage. So I just want to give that as an example, as PoB isn't the end all be all. And generally you want to trust the build creator, because people don't trust the build creator. Sometimes I've had over the years people be like, hey Ziz, I made some improvements to your build, and they were not improvements, and then I had to fix their build. So trust the build creator if they're generally somebody that makes good guides. And yeah, and then there's an item tab as well. I normally have I normally make multiple sets of items in my guides, and in skills I will normally have like very handholdy, shows you how to do each level. Let's see. And then I can teach you how to import a guide as well from a build guide. I've already shown you how to import from a profile, but so first you search for a build guide, and yeah, getting recommendations for people is good. Look at that beautiful intro. It physically hurts making these. And then generally you expand here and boom. And you copy either of those. We normally have like both so that there's a backup link. So we have paste bin and pop in. And then you go to Path of Building. You click new, import, export, and you just click import down here. And boom. That's it. It's that simple. Now, down here at the bottom, we will have the trees. So this is meant for new players, so that you can see the trees changing as you level. The reason I made this is 2 or 3 years ago, when I first made this, every guide in PoB or with videos, there would be like, here's the skill tree for the video. And new players would just not know where to go. It's like, well, do you go up here first? Do you go down here first? I control C, control V, yes. And then sometimes you'll see this. Actually, right now you will always see this on all of my starters, for example. This is an older tree version, which may not be fully compatible. And the reason for that is that we make the guide as soon as we get the patch notes. And what ends up happening is that PoB hasn't fully updated yet. So there might be one or two changes that doesn't affect the build that we've already accounted for. Um, that, it'll just prompt the error because of a patch. Mm. Right. In the config, we have loads of important things. This is all the configurations for your characters and your enemies, and build guides will have set these already for you. It can be things like, does the build have frenzy charges, does it have power charges, and most of us will make it so that we're fighting a boss like Cyrus, because you can see here what it does. So if your enemy is not a boss, they have nothing. It's considering it just a random white mob. Whereas Cyrus has 50 Ele res, 30 chaos res, loads more armor, and less reduced effect of curses. So a quick example here. I can't really show it on this build, but for example, a gem like, let's say that we're playing a fireball build. Then if we have 1 million damage on our normal build, that might be 600k with LE Focus and 800k with Fire Pen against the boss. Because for normal monsters, the Fire Pen won't matter much because they might not have that much resist. But for anything where you really will need the damage, then Fire Pen will be huge because they do have resist. So it'll change which gems and which annoyance are the best. And that's why we always have the Pinnacle boss selected, Cyrus selected. And you like never really care, like, am I smashing white monsters? Like, the only thing you're going to care about is the tanky thing. And then, yeah, here's an example of how we do our build guides. You can see here that we have your level 1 to 12, your level 12 to 28, etc. And we try to make it clear what skills that you keep and what skills that you don't keep as well. So that you don't end up with like 6 extra skills that you aren't actually using. And under main skill, that's like what you select. Some main skills, Explosive Art doesn't. Let me open up a new PoB and show you a quick example. See if I remember a character. I think I do. It's a champion. Altar Boy? No. Not that. One more attempt. Last Resort. Lightning Strike. Here you can see that we have a Val skill. So we have several selections here. Like Val Lightning Strike comes with Lightning Strike and Val Lightning Strike. And both of them also have melee hit and projectiles. And this is like several skills will have like subsections like that. Spell Slinger as well, if you're using multiple spells, is another example. So it's worth knowing that that exists. And when you have a skill like that, if you don't have it selected here, it will not tell you what the best skill gem is. But when you do have it selected, boom, it will start calculating what will give you the most damage. Now, this isn't always accurate. Again, this can be a little bit of a bait. For example, multi-strike on some skills can feel very bad. Even if it is technically more damage, it can end up feeling really bad with being animation locked. And then we have elemental focus. Sorry. If it ends up removing things like shock, or your build chills and stuff like that, then that can end up being losing you damage. So again, trusting the build creator here can be important. Items, same thing. Like I said, we have multiple sets here. And you can craft items. You can just pop in uniques. And playing around in PoE is like very, very important for learning. You can actually... This is a really good feature not everybody knows about. Let's load up Path of the Exile. Path of Exile has a really, really amazingly cool feature. And that is copy-paste. This is not a third-party thing. This is literally built into the game. So if I look at my chest right now, Torment Shelter, and I control C right now. Like I just hover over the chest and I controlled C. If I now open Notepad, for example, I can paste that in. This is just on my paste now. And we can actually paste this straight in to Path of Building. We don't actually need to click Create Custom Item. Just being on the item screen and pasting will paste this item in. This is just a feature of the game. And you can hover over any item. I can't remember if it works when somebody links you the item. Oh, it does, right? Wait, let me delete my paste again. Yes, it does. It does work when somebody links you an item too. So somebody can link you, like if you want to try on somebody's item, they can link you the item and you can import it to your character to see how much of a difference it is. So that's a really, really cool feature. And PoE Trade has features like that as well. That is like an import button. Very, very good feature. PoE Ninja as well. Or sorry, Craft of Exile you can paste things into. Calculations. This is where it gets really complicating for a lot of players. You will feel overwhelmed and it's hard to read. And it gets kind of spreadsheety. This will have all the effects, offensive and defensive, and they'll lie to you as well. Let me think of a character that makes a good example here. Actually, this one does. So if we go to calculations, let's see. Let me turn on my flasks. How much armor do I have? I have 65,000 armor. Now, if we go to calcs, look at this, right? My maximum hit taken, 106,000. And I have like crazy effective HP. So you can see here that it says I have insane effective HP against physical. I can take 42,000 elemental damage, 10,000 chaos damage, and 106,000 physical damage. Now watch this. Let's see, where do they move it to? Because this moves. Where's the enemy punch? Why don't I see it? To the right? It used to be top left. Enemy skill physical damage. Right, now let's see. We get a big slam for 15,000 damage. Now, our physical damage is only... We can only tank 19,000 damage now. So why is that? Why is our effective HP so low now? So the reason for that is armor lies to you. Both in PoE and in in-game. So in-game, it'll tell you that your armor is fizz mitigation. So you'll get a lot of people that'll get to 90%. Oops. They'll get to 90% and they'll be like, oh, job done. Like I have 86% fizz reduction. I'm not gonna die to fizz damage. But you don't actually have 86% fizz reduction. That's because armor mitigates a flat amount. It does not mitigate percentage, which endurance charges do. So let's say that you had 20 endurance charges, then you would actually have 80% fizz mitigation and you would be virtually immortal to fizz damage. So it's just important to, like, if you're actually trying to calculate how tanky your character is, make sure you calculate against a big fizz hit. Why does the max hit change then? It's just worded badly. POB just doesn't calculate it properly. It's not actually the max hit. It would... So, let's see. So if I put 50, the reason it goes so high is I could tank... It's basically... It's trying to tell you can tank this. You can tank 2,138 hits of 50. But you can only tank 2 hits of 10,000. And that's because armor is a lot better against small and often hits. To get enough armor to mitigate big hits is very, very hard. And you have like no mitigation against fist dots. Like armor does nothing against that. And this is a good time to mention. This is actually why the new Juggernaut node is so strong. Because next patch, Juggernauts will be able to mitigate elemental damage with armor. And that happens after the resists. So if you have that, like say you have 100,000 armor and 8% of that is mitigating spells. So let's say we have 100,000. So that ends up being 8,000. And then that 8,000 armor will be mitigating spells, but it's after resist. So it ends up being, you know, small amounts of like 200 to 500 damage that are going through. And that 8,000 armor will do a lot against that. So is armor noob bait? No, armor is very strong. You just got to know when to use it and how to use it. So armor doesn't do anything against fist dots. And armor does not do much against big hits. But it trivializes mapping. And it does help against a lot of things. Like, I love being between 10 to 30k armor. And then mapping feels really great. And it will help against bosses. But, you know, let's say something like, you know, Vol, him slamming, or Minotaur, Shaper, things like that. Then armor, you will need a large amount for it to mitigate a lot. Think like 100,000, like 50 to 100,000. Yeah, the in-game fizz reduction is a noob bait. There's a lot of things and tooltips that are just not true. Like, even the elemental weakness tooltip in-game says you take more elemental damage. Which, it could leave the person to think that, okay, well, elemental weakness, it must do like, oh, I take 10% increased elemental damage. But it doesn't. Like, if you have overcapped all your resistances, elemental weakness does not increase the damage you take at all. So, they should make it more clear. I don't know why they don't. I've even mentioned it to them. They still don't fix it. And there is a lot of other calculations here. You can get minion stats and stuff like that. It is worth playing around with and exploring, but it is so complicated and it's a lot more build specific. Like for example here for Vol Lightning Strike, it'll tell you. So this could be a good way to figure out Trinity, for example, like if you're doing enough of the different elemental damages. And yeah, it'll give you just more of a breakdown of his stats. Very, very good for minions. It'll show you things like duration as well. And you can hover over things too. I think the explosive arrow one will be better. So you can show, for example, where do they move the radius, the AoE radius? Here, for example, you will see the radius of the explosion. So the white dot in the middle is approximately the size of a character, and then you see like the radius of the explosions. Hey, Carve. So, node power. Showing node power as a calculation takes your current passive and gear combinations and will show you the strongest passives. So this is really, really good for learning what to go for next and optimizing your build. So a little, even more important for slightly more advanced players, and really, really good for anointing. So we'll show that here. Close this one. So, ideally for doing this, you would also want to turn on the things that you think you're going to have for sure. I would normally turn on what I'm going to have in a boss fight because I don't care about optimizing my build for mapping. and then boom, show node power. It's down here at the bottom. And what I also like to do, so here you would turn on include in full DPS, because sometimes there would be multiple skills, let's say Essence Drain and Soul Rend. And then I like clicking full DPS or combined DPS. And then you see that it starts populating. So right now it is finding the biggest nodes regardless of pathing there. So this is really, really good for anointing. There's several ways you can do this too. This takes a while to populate. So obviously you can see like there are nodes that are like over here that are really good. But this is very, very much pathing. You don't want to waste 3, 6, 7, 8, 9 small nodes to get there. So using this to look at things that are nearby and are still good is really good. Combined DPS is used when you have multiple skills doing damage. So say you have Spell Slinger, Soul Rend, Essence Drain, or something that has both a projectile and a hit portion. It's used for things like that. And you can see this power report here. You can double click on it. It'll take you to it. So Snowforged ends up being the biggest full DPS. And it also shows you DPS per point here. So Deadly Draw ends up being the biggest per point. Sorry, second, third biggest. Holy Dominion is the biggest per point. So 191,000 damage per point. Whereas this is 565,000 damage. But that's only when you're anointing it. So on this, we have Watchtower, which does not show up at all because this is part of the hidden calculations. And that is because it is an additional totem. So this is how we're hitting 20 fuses on this build. So again, this is not something you could like really figure out without fully knowing the game, but this is where your trusting build creators comes in. Because PoB tells you to trust Snowforged, which for a lot of builds, this will be safe, but there will be builds like Explosive Arrow where there are things that AI can't calculate for you, basically. And then you can also go, let's see, let's click on the Marble Amulet here at endgame, and then Anoint. Here as well, you can sort by full DPS, and it'll just, boom. Divine Judgment, Snowforged, Lava Lash. These are all the best anoints. And then you can go down the list and be like, which one is cheap? This one is cheap. Red, red, brown, that I can handle. And like, you know, whenever it's like gold, gold, silver, it's like, nah, miss me with that. So, for a build guide, you want to like find it, import it, and then yeah, look at the leveling trees. Not everyone does that in their guides, but I try to like make sure that it's very, very easy to figure out everything when following the guide. Now, most of the videos, I try to have some gameplay at the start of what it looks like. And that's generally whenever we have, let's see. So like here you can see like gameplay. Now, if it's a new skill, we can't have that. We would normally just end up putting some random stuff from like the trailers and stuff. But we try to like show you how it plays. Because some people will be like, I mean, it's double delay damage. I have to put the totem down. The totem has to attack. Then it has to explode. And then the enemy dies. That sounds boring. I want to right click and my enemy dies. So not everybody will like things like that. So it's important to show people what kind of build it is. And then you get to like get a feel of how strong it is as well. What I also try to do is I don't always show what the strongest characters or the strongest gear. I remember in one of my earliest Cyclone videos, I got tired of everybody showing all their builds with only the strongest gear. So I made a build guide video using mediocre gear. And that helped people a lot more because that was, you know, made more sense. And then, yeah, we have like the skill tree, everything step by step. And it's usually very easy to follow leveling. And I always mention like pantheons and everything in the video. And the best thing about following, like the reason you really want to follow build guides from somebody that like a Twitch streamer is that you can ask them live I think most Twitch streamers do that. At least I do. Like whenever somebody's struggling with a build that I made, they can come into my channel and be like, hey, I'm struggling. Can you help me? And either me or somebody in my chat um, will be able to help them, which is harder on builds I haven't played. And the biggest thing, a lot of people that ask me for questions simply haven't watched the video. They will open the POB, get confused, and then come and ask me. That tilts me. Please don't do that. I will roast you. I get asked about minion nodes and stuff. But yeah, that's like the majority of path of building. Do we have any questions? Bully them so hard they quit the game. It's just frustrating to spend so much time doing it just for people to ignore it. And it's funny because the reason I started making build guides was to get less questions. Probably not Trix Reno. When Tarkov? After this. Will this be on the test? For skills that hit twice, like Lightning Warp or Shock Nova, should I be adjusting the count value? So for those in particular, I actually don't know if it's calculated. I literally do not know for those two if it's calculated. But I know for things like Spark and stuff, yes, you have to adjust the count value. What's the top 3 builds you might consider in 3.19? I never ever start even thinking about build guides and builds until the patch notes come out. The reason for that is because so often it just wrecks and rocks the boat so hard that I have to do everything over again. I pretty much consider anyone that puts out full build guides before patch notes a con artist just hungry for views. And I get it. I'm hungry for views too. But it's so shitty when somebody ends up getting a build guide right now and then they don't look at YouTube until the actual patch hits and they start playing that build and, well, the entire build broke because of the patch notes and their wipe is ruined. And I think that's really shitty. So it's bad for me because it basically means that the patch notes drop and then I have to work really, really hard. But there's no other way to do it while being fair to my viewers. So I think it's a massive shitty disservice to put a build guide out early. A lot of people do very bad build guides, sadly. Most people I've seen on YouTube and Twitch aren't too bad. There are also YouTube channels that do intentional bad builds. They're the ones that have like recommended real money trading sites. So the build guide will be intentionally bad. And then when you're struggling and asking for help, they will recommend that you buy exalted orbs for money to fix the problems. They'll be like, oh, well, you don't have these items. And that, like, there's like 2 or 3 channels. I mean, chat can point out which ones they are. And there are also... yes, sadly, YouTube ads will automatically put real money trading ads on a video, even on mine. And I literally can't control that. I report it, but I can't do anything about it. And there's also like some YouTube creators, for example, would like they'll edit. So they'll be like, oh, this is how it looks against Awakener 8, but it was actually Awakener 1. And things like that. So they're like, there's a lot of lying going on. The best advice I can give is to just play people's build guides. If you have a bad experience once, maybe you fucked something up. But if you repeatedly have a bad experience and they're not helping you fix the guide, you know, it's probably they just make shitty guides. So I would say like 98% are happy with my guides and I'm always able to fix whatever problems they have. We've had 1 bad build guide so far and 1 mediocre out of all the ones we've put out. And I will always forever be sorry about the explosive arrow incident. Heart Glass was fine. But we did have an explosive arrow incident that ruined people's league, and I still feel bad about it. Is it okay to use the forum guides? No video. There are many very good guides on the build forums. The problem is that the people making bad guides copy the formats of good guides so they look good, and you can remove any replies saying it's a bad guide. You just tell GDD it's harassment, and they will remove any negative comments. This is the same for any forum post at all. So you have no idea of knowing if a guide is bad or good on the build forums. So yes, there are a lot of good ones, but there are also so many bad ones. For example, a great example, this is on YouTube, but there was a guy making an arc guide, and he had arc linked to faster attacks. And that is somebody that makes guides for people. It had over 1,000 views and several comments saying they were league starting, like unironically, like, oh, I'm actually going to league start this. So there are a lot of people that should not be making guides, but they do. Anki's Arcwish. Anki's Arcwish is a good build. Any tips on using PoB to scale damage from tier 16 1 million range to endgame level damage? Yeah, that's a great question and something a lot of people struggle on. So let's use my explosive arrow again. Why did I lose damage? I don't know why I lost damage, but anyway. So right now we have 3 million damage, right? So let's up this. And here is where it starts min-maxing a little bit. And it depends. Like, this is a very, very tanky one too. The bow? Well, so we actually do have a really good bow. But yes, in the last patch, like, I don't know if we're going to have access to similar powerful tools. But for example, in Sentinel, we did have the option to actually get a better bow relatively easily. And going over 3 million can be pretty expensive, but I'm going to start showing you expensive options so you get an idea on how you would keep moving onwards. So for example, in the last patch, I could actually add 100 wed to the bow. Look at the damage. By adding 100 wed, which I had this bow in the last patch, boom, 3.6 to 4.3. That's one big upgrade. Now, we are going to, let's see. We are going to remove Ignite Proliferation because we got that on our gloves instead. We actually lose the fire dot multi. I'm gonna remove that. So I'm just gonna remove this. This is now prolif. So we're losing that. So we went back down to 3.2. But we managed to buy an awaken burning damage. Why can't I see awaken burning damage? Wait, why is there no awaken skills? What's wrong with me? What happened? Oh, show none awaken. That wasn't there before. Right. So now we're putting, instead of Ignite Prolif, because we're getting that from the gloves now, we're now getting a level 6 awaken burning damage, which becomes level 7 from our bow. Now we're up to 5.1 million damage. And the same here, we replace awaken Ellie damage with there. And these aren't even like insanely expensive options. Like for example, you can do awaken empower, but obviously a level 5 empower doesn't even show. You can actually do awaken empower for another, but that's a little overkill because that actually is expensive. But obviously that's one example. So area of that. And then another example, I was able to drop life tap and I put inspiration in instead. Boom. And that freed up even more auras. So I was able to do malevolence. And that puts me at 6.6. This was with divine blessing, which makes it even stronger. So now we're at 6.8. And both these awakened burning gems or gems have been pretty cheap. And now, so getting 21 gems is actually like, it really ends up adding up. So on Ballista Totem, it doesn't really do that much more damage. It does a little bit. However, yeah, you can't do that anymore. I'm giving an example from Sentinel League of just how everything adds up. But look at how much like the level 21s end up adding. Oh, it doesn't hit the next threshold on combustion because we're already getting 21 from the bow. So we would need 22. So it doesn't actually do anything for combustion and inspiration. But in a lot of cases, you don't have a +1 bow already. So yeah. Yeah, +2 support bow would work. But that's one example. So now we're already at 7 million. And then, so for example, on this Vermilion ring, there is, I'll show you in-game. There is this essence of Delirium. And on ring, this is 15% damage over time multiplier. So let's see, where is that? So that's something you can actually add. As well, like crafting rings with that will really add up. So let's see, essence, this ring can't exist, but you get the idea, right? You get 2 rings like that. Look how much that adds. And you could actually get a better one too. You could have wed. So here you can see quickly how you could go from 3 million to 9 million DPS with min-maxing a little bit. And when we keep going further, you'll see it scales exponentially. Once you're able to min-max like your 21 gems, your awakened gems, your jewels and stuff like that. Here, let's give a good example. Let's give a cool, let me turn up power node because it makes it laggy. Let me give you guys a cool example. So let me just turn on some jewel slots. That I want to have on. Boom. We've turned on some jewel slots, right? So we're going to make 2 jewels. Jewel, Viridian Jewel. So let's show the difference between triple and quad damage. Oh wait. Is it burning? Fire? Okay, that's fine. Let's see. Let's make the... Where's the other one? We'll make another... We'll make a triple damage one. Fire. So... This might seem like a small difference, right? So we're now at 7.9 million damage with 1 jewel in, and we'll put in the jewels. Now we're at 9.5, but look at the difference between a triple stat damage and a quad stat damage. Just by those jewels each having 1 extra stat, we're getting 1,000,000 extra damage. And this will keep going up exponentially because these 4 jewels having an extra stat will get affected by everything and will affect everything else you will add. So everything becomes like you're climbing this like exponential staircase, and before you know it, you'll be at 20 million damage. And that's why if you go and load up a PoE Ninja build with insane damage, here, that's a fake build. Let's grab something with like 300 million, because that's actually very achievable on softcore. Those jewels are also decently expensive. Oh yeah, I'm not trying to say you can get 20 million on a budget. I'm just showing people how exponential that's against Cyrus damage. I'm just showing people how like exponential damage works and how important getting things like 21 gems, getting 20 quality, getting awakened gems, how that works. Disagree with what? So here, this has 378 million damage. And anything you remove here, look at the damage. Look how much damage Bottled Faith does for the build. just the Bottle Faith is 50 million damage. So then you kind of understand how exponential the damage is when one piece of the build is that much damage. Just the boots is 60 million damage. Like, we turn off the boots, we turn off the Bottle Faith, we lost 100%. And this isn't always a good example. I'm just showing you a little example of how exponential everything is at the end. Lost 50%? Yeah. 100k? No, that was 100 million. Not 100k. This is 378 million. So hopefully that drives home the point a little bit. I don't even understand this build at a base level that makes this even possible. So all of those builds that are over a few hundred million damage, they're like things like Mage's Blood, Bottled Faith, Berserk, Paradoxica, etc. But yeah, I think that works for... Oh yeah, and shotgun charges. Like, it's just so min-max. And you always end up sacrificing all your defense at that point because you don't need any. But I think we'll end there for questions. We do have a feedback thing at exclamation mark feedback. And I hope you guys enjoyed Path of Exile University. Hopefully that makes it a little easier to understand and helps improve you a little bit for the new league. So thanks for watching. Sub if you liked the video, but more importantly, try to die less than